Today is April 13th, which is exactly one full week away from Easter. It's been a really cool spring to the point where I really haven't had any tulips coming in yet from the field. I have like 3 stems that were mature. This is uncharacteristic of what typically happens, but I'm happy because that means that most of my tulips should arrive in time for Easter. I didn't plant a ton of tulips this year because of what was happening with my daughter. Just wasn't sure where we would be at this phase. So I've got probably about, we'll say like 700 tulips over here in this bed, and maybe just like another 100-ish tulips in that bed over there. So it's not a ton of tulips, but you know, having like 800-ish tulips is still a decent amount of tulips. If you do a rough like 10 stems per bunch, we're talking about 80, and usually I do about a dozen, but I have some daffodils, so we're talking about 80 bouquets that I want to move as quickly as possible. Now, I have been focusing primarily on wholesale over the past year. I don't have a strong retail channel. I've done things like CSAs in the past. I sell at a retail country store, and I've also sold at a farmer's market. So I do have some customers, but I don't have a ton of customers. And one of the things with tulips is that even though you can store them, they take up refrigerator space. I have my in-laws here. One of our refrigerators is down. So I don't have a lot of cooling space. And what that means is I need to move these as quickly as possible. So therefore, the campaign to move these for Easter should have started realistically at least last week. Didn't get a chance. So we're going to start today, and I'm going to take you along my journey of how I'm going to proactively try to move tulips and where we get to at the end of the week. So just very quickly, you can see where my tulips are. I would say that these are really far off and they're probably not going to be ready by Easter. This is Foxy Foxtrot, which is an early double. These are the 3 stems of tulips that I've already gotten blooms out of. I think these will definitely be ready by Easter since we're going to hit like high 60s next week. This is Crown of Dynasty, a completely new tulip. It's a completely new style of tulip, and I think these should actually be ready soon too. These are supposed to turn a little bit more pinkish red on the outside, and then they kind of flare up and stay white over here. So I'm really excited for this one to come. So this is like the bulk of all my tulips, which I think is a good color for Easter. We've got some perennialized tulips here, which just from experience, I know that this actually, I don't think this is going to be ready by next week, especially since our temperatures are not going to be wild. We're not having a heat wave, just having a couple of days of sun. Here's some additional crate planted tulips that I had very last minute. Black Parrot, these are not going to be ready by Sunday either. Let me show you where the other bed is at. This bed over here is full of a double, which I didn't get a chance to label, but these should definitely be ready by Easter. And we've got some straggler leaves over here, which are from bulbs that didn't make their way out of the bed. So not necessarily an issue here right now because I wasn't really using the bed. You see some lilies popping in, but this is why you do dig your bulbs out, because if you were planting in this area, that area would have been disrupted by this. But I do think that if I let this perennialize for another year, the year after it will generate bloom heads, and this is how I know. This is year 3 in this section of some doubles that have perennialized. So you can see over here, this got chomped down by something, but otherwise this would have been a viable head. This one's still a viable head. So you can see if you do give them time, they will regenerate, but most of the time we don't have the space to be able to do that adequately. So you can tell from the weather outside, it's really cool. Today it's 45 degrees. It's just been nonstop rain. It's been a lot of cloudy skies. Not a bad thing if you're growing outside, but this time of year, if you have tunnels where we are, you would think that this is a really good time for ranunculus and anemones. True from a temperature standpoint, but when you get multiple cloudy days like this without a lot of sun, now you start facilitating disease, fungal diseases in tunnels, and this becomes a pretty precarious time because I have seen crops getting completely wiped out from weather like this. So we are going to get a couple of days of sun, which I'm hoping will help with that. Unfortunately, those days of sun coincide with when we are at chemo, We are in New York City for both days of this week's cycle, which is a bit of a bummer because those are very, very long days. We get up super early and we get up later, but I already know on Tuesday when we get back from chemo, I'm going to have to prioritize getting some of those harvested. And so I'm going to make sure that the kitchen or that the fridge cooler is all ready for that. So I'm going to go home, get some coffee. I'm going to go plant some ramps that a friend brought over yesterday. And then we're going to get started on marketing.
Let's break down what marketing actually entails here. The first thing I'm doing is figuring out what is my offer. What am I pricing my bouquets at? Typically, for a holiday weekend, you can increase your prices. I am choosing to stay with my $25 a bouquet price point. However, I want to minimize the number of people who I am selling to and try to sell them as many flowers as possible. And therefore, I am doing a buy two, get one free for a limited time. So for anyone who orders from today, which is Sunday, all the way up to Wednesday, they can put in a code on my website, which says buy two, get one free. So I spent some time crafting this offer up on my webpage. I like having everything done on my webpage because it takes care of state sales tax, but it also makes sure that I have email addresses and I can communicate with those people going forward. And it's also a cashless type of exchange when they come to pick up. The next thing I'm doing is then communicating this offer to my customers through both my Facebook page, Instagram page, as well as my email. Now, the email platform that I use right now is through Squarespace, which is where I host my website. Generally, I like Squarespace, but what kills me about their email is that I cannot quote unquote segment customers, meaning I cannot email only customers who have bought flowers from me. If I want to email my customers, I have to email everyone who has ever bought from me. And most of my customers who shop on my website are actually fellow flower farmers who are buying bulbs and corms from me. So obviously none of those people are interested in Easter tulips. So I have to manually go in and tag people and so forth. But the job got done and I was able to send out that email to my past customers.
I sent the email about an hour ago, put some stuff on Facebook as well as on Instagram, and we got 2 bites for the buy 2, get 1 free, which is 6 whole bouquets. So there are 2 things I want to talk about right now. One is this concept of trying to sell more through less people. I want to prove to people that you don't need hundreds of people in order to have some sort of sustainable business, especially if it's side hustle. If you're looking to sell somewhere in the 4-figure, maybe low 5-figure range, you can do it with a relatively small amount of people. Now, fewer people, especially for pickup, also means me dealing with fewer cars coming in, fewer customers. My property is just not configured in a way that's great for a lot of traffic. And so I like just having few people coming anyway. So to be able to sell 6 bouquets through 3 people is a win in my book. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is just pricing economics, because when we start getting into buy 2, get 1 free, obviously now we're talking about more stems for a reduced price. So my tulip bouquets or mixed bouquets have been about 12 stems for $25 this season. With the buy 2, get 1 free, especially for my valued customers, the ones that have bought from me, I want to keep that same type of arrangement. I'll say that for Easter this season, I'm going to have retail bouquets at the country store, and I'm probably going to do about 10 stems a bouquet for $25. But for those that are picking up here, I'm going to be having at least 12 stems. And so let's talk about economics, because once you get to 12 stems, that's 36 stems in 3 bouquets for $50. That comes out to about $1.38 a stem for tulips. And that to me is definitely on the lower side. It's not a pricing range that I typically entertain. And the reason why that's okay for me is because we're going to mix in some daffodils. So let's talk a little bit about daffodil math. This area here is a relatively new landscaping area. Last year we had to dig up the septic tank and everything. Long story about that. But we redid this area. Eric and my father-in-law put a lot of man labor into this. And I was like, what can I put out here that the deer aren't going to eat? So there's a lot of daffodils and other perennials here. The reason why I'm talking about this is because these daffodils are in year 2. This is the Sir Winston Churchill ones. I don't think these are going to be ready in time by Easter, but we definitely have some other ones over there, actually it's kind of hard to tell by the air conditioning unit, but there's some Sir Winston Churchill daffodils that will be ready. And then there are also some year one daffodils that are clearly going to be ready. And I'm going to pick these soon and put them into the fridge. But I look at these daffodils as buffer stems, and let me explain what I mean by that. Buffer stems is my personal terminology for close to free stems. They give me buffer in a bouquet to play with pricing because they're not completely free in the sense that obviously I had to pay for the bulb, there's labor involved, but they're close to practically being free. I mean, I could value them at like 35 cents, 50 cents, and I feel like that would be adequate because literally all I had to do was buy the bulb, dig a hole, put it in, and then pull it out. I mean, it's like the most minimum amount of labor needed. There's no cleaning with daffodils. The only thing you need to do is like condition them to make sure that the sap doesn't kill the tulip in a vase, but assuming you've conditioned them, they're totally fine to go into a bouquet for a customer. So I say this because if each bouquet now has at least 2 stems of daffodils, now we're really looking at like 10 stems of tulips for about $20. Now, of course, we still have to factor in things like the paper itself, the labor to make the bouquet, as well as things like rubber bands, but you're getting the point here. Now we're getting a lot closer to the range that I want to be at to sell tulips, because at the end of the day, tulips are one and done. They're a little bit more labor, and I want to make sure that I'm getting what I need to from a pricing perspective, but also making my customers happy. It is now the day after Monday, coming to the field to check up on the tulips. We've had 14 bouquets that are pre-sold, 1 last minute bouquet today, so total of 15 bouquets. And I've now paused the sales and the promotion online because I'm getting a little bit nervous around the availability of the number of stems that I have. And that's because the weather is obviously always changing and it's actually getting cooler versus warmer. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. We have definitely progressed a little bit further along, but I'm just nervous about this over here, which is my biggest collection of tulips that I do expect to be ready. I've never grown this before, so I think these should have a little bit more pink, but they're starting to open up in a way that makes me feel like that they're already ready. So I'm gonna take a couple of stems, bring them inside to make sure I know when to harvest them. These should be ready. I've been harvesting daffodil stems, putting them into the refrigerator. So I think we should definitely have enough for 14 bouquets. I just also want to have enough for the country store. So as of right now, we are pausing. So right there, we have 5 customers contributing to $250 worth of sales and 14 bouquets. So again, my objective was to move the stems as quickly as possible through the fewest amount of customers as possible, and I've achieved that objective. One of the things that really influenced my decision to create a promotion, because most people are probably saying, why would you create buy 2 get 1 free if you know that you're going to have demand for Easter? Well, it's the fact that E is getting chemo tomorrow, and the first few days after chemo are tough on her because she's still a little bit nauseous. She might be throwing up. I expect her to be a little bit more high touch, meaning that I'm going to be spending more time with her. I'm not going to have a ton of time doing bouquets, marketing. So for me, it is better for me to have a guaranteed sale and have those stems go somewhere, make some money, than to try to maximize profit. And I want to make sure that this comes clear to everyone, because maximizing profit or revenue may not always be the primary objective. It always depends on your circumstances. So I hope that this resonates with some of you guys. And I think for now, I'm going to be focusing more effort on trying to drive that traffic to the country store, where there's less pressure on me to be able to provide a certain amount of bouquets, assuming that the weather may not be fully cooperative. It's around 6 p.m. We just got back from chemo. Today was a windy, kind of warm day. It was like 60 degrees with some sun. And so we have some improvement on the tulips as it comes to being ready. We actually have a bit to harvest. So I'm going to take you through what this process looks like. Now, in an ideal situation, if I had all my tulips in this like ready state, meaning the different varieties, I would be bunching them up here and basically just putting them in the fridge and they'd be ready to go. But because I don't have some of the varieties I would want in a bunch, I am going to just harvest them all into a bucket, but you are still going to see some efficiencies here because they are going to effectively all be processed here, going straight into the bucket with very minimal work. So let me show you what that looks like. There are a few things that I have at the ready to do this quickly. I have my bucket that I'm going to harvest directly into, a crate that I'm going to potentially put some stems on top before I'm ready to cut, a wheelbarrow that I'm going to put spent bulbs in, and then a paper towel that I'm going to lightly wet. And we're going to use this to help take off any residual soil that the stems will have. So for example, this is a great stem that has, I'm going to come closer, very little dirt. Because the stem is so long, I can just cut it over here. Done. Goes directly in. Now the problem is I will have some stems like this one. This is a little shorter and I'm going to need to split the bulb, and it has a little bit of dirt. So you can see it's not terrible, but it needs a little bit of processing. So I'm gonna just take off the bulb. And now what I'm doing over here is I'm just wiping it off like that. And that is enough. And I'm now gonna put this in here. So we're gonna repeat this process because this is on video. I'll know exactly how much time I spent. We're gonna clear as many tulips as possible using this process, and then we're gonna see how long it took me to do that to give you a little bit of a better idea of what efficient harvesting could look like. All done. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 32. That was 32 stems. All right. How good does this look? This Crown of Dynasty is getting a little bit more pink. I brought a stem inside yesterday. It's looking really cool. I'll show you an example later. I did ask in the tulip workshop if anyone grew these and went to harvest, and they said, oh yeah, you can pick this at this stage. They'll color up and they'll flare out. Kind of looks like a girl in like a little spring dress. So I'm really liking this variety. I would probably try Red Dress next year or Dynasty, which has a similar type of habit, just more saturated in colors. I'm excited to use these. And ooh la la, we have some other doubles that are ready. I think this is Foxtrot, which is like a sister to Foxy, the one that we just harvested, because this one's a little bit more like pink and less yellow. And it also has that shorter stem length. So, you know, these are short, they're good for jars. You can still make them work in bouquets. And hopefully they will stretch a little bit in the cooler in a cool bucket of water. But I think that most of these still need a little bit more time, maybe like another day. So we're gonna leave them here. Tomorrow's gonna be pretty cloudy, I think. And hopefully we'll be able to harvest when I get back. Daffodils. Pick some more daffodils. Just to show you what the daffodils look like, this is Tahiti, a specialty one. So we've got a few over here that look like that. And these are definitely tall enough to pull. So I'm gonna pull all of these. Let me show you another variety that we have. Chance trampled over these, but they're this luscious double. It's kind of hard to tell because that one's flopping over, but like just look how doubly and roughly that is. It doesn't even look like a daffodil. So we've got a few of those, and we're gonna put those into the bouquets too. So I'm gonna pick them right now. There you go. There we go. Yeah. We've got some more in the front coming up. I had planted these. It was late November after Thanksgiving. So these are not yet ready to be picked, but they will be ready. I find that if you plant them late, some of them don't root properly. And what happens is these are not like specialty daffodils for flowers, but some of them over here, like they'll grow a little bit shorter, but they'll naturalize for next year. They'll look a lot better. This is another one that we got. I think this one's Ice King or Obdam. I forget which one it is. But yeah, these I got worried because they were showing so short, but they started really stretching and they look pretty good. So hopefully we'll be able to get a few more stems from this area too. One of the things that I've seen others struggle is being able to sell daffodils to their customers. I've heard feedback that if you rebrand them to Narcissus, they sell like hotcakes, and other people being like, it doesn't matter what you call them, people just don't want daffodils. I've personally found that I can sell daffodils in mixed bunches, especially the specialty daffodils. So last year I grew the double kinds, which don't look like daffodils, but this year I have also been able to sell some daffodils that don't look like your traditional yellow trumpet daffodil, and people do come and they think it's really nice. So I think it's really dependent on what kind you're growing and how you're even marketing them, because in my description I say we've got specialty tulips as well as narcissus, so specialty narcissus, and I made it a point to not call them daffodils because I've learned from what other people said. So gonna put these into the fridge. That's a wrap for tonight. We've got to get up early again tomorrow to go back to chemo, and then hopefully we got some more flowers ready because tomorrow's gonna be Wednesday, and we got to start making some bunches for the country store for Thursday.
It is time to start making bouquets for the country store, and I want to talk about what goes into these bouquets and how I'm pricing them. So each bouquet is going to be sold for $25 and they're going to have 11 stems each. I put 3 daffodils and 8 tulip stems. I am valuing each tulip at $2 a stem and each daffodil at only 65 cents a stem. And again, this is because I consider them buffer stems. They perennialize with very little work and maintenance needed. I know that that's a little bit on the low end. You can price them however you want, but this number works for me. So that brings this total bouquet value from a cost of goods perspective to $17.95. Now, this country store does take a 20% commission on every bouquet sold, which means that for a $25 bouquet sold, they get to keep $5 and I keep $20. So this extra $2.05 goes to things like the labor needed to make the bouquet, as well as the labor needed to drive up 3 miles to deliver them, the gas, the cost of all of that, rubber bands, paper, and so forth. Now it's time to harvest some more stems. I'm always on the lookout on how to be more efficient, improve from my last time. This time what I did differently was I took a paper towel and wiped each stem individually, which, believe it or not, did make things more efficient. So I was able to cut down about a second per stem by harvesting 40 stems in about just under 6 minutes. I did a quick mini harvest during my lunch break of about 12 stems, and I just want to point out that I don't always track my time. I'm not always looking for efficiencies. It was a beautiful afternoon. I just wanted to enjoy some of that weather, take a few stems in, and just enjoy the task of harvesting.
It is now Thursday afternoon, so I'm on my lunch break right now, coming out to see the tulips. As you can see, blue skies, sunny weather. I would call this the optimal tulip weather. It is 60 degrees right now, where it is just warm enough to coax them along, but not necessarily have them blow open. And that's good, because when you have like 80-degree weather, you are like running out trying to get as many tulips harvested as possible. But luckily, we are not in that state right now. Luckily also, my tulips seem to be coming along, and I think the majority of these will be ready in time for Easter. This is actually something I wanted to pause and talk about, because I don't think I have really addressed this. I am a relatively newer farmer, haven't grown for that long, but tulips are my biggest crop. I've grown enough tulips in various capacities in the field, as well as forcing them to feel comfortable enough to know what impacts tulips, especially as it comes to weather impact, sunlight impact, temperature impact. I feel like I have a decent handle on predicting when they will bloom. Now, that being said, when they're out in the field, Mother Nature, like, there's no control over Mother Nature. And I say this because if you have never grown tulips, you're watching this video, you're like, yes, next year I am going to time my tulips for an event and I'm going to plant all these tulips and get a great harvest. I caution you, because tulips are very, very fickle. Sometimes the weather forecast is going to say it's going to be sunny. And then, of course, you know that in 2025, weather forecasts are still not very accurate. It becomes cooler. The tulips aren't ready by Easter or your event. It's really hard to forecast tulips a month out, even a couple of weeks out. It becomes a lot easier to forecast when you're about like 10 days out, 7 days out, with a bit more precision. And so that brings me to this topic of growing for Easter. Now, this year, the stars aligned and Easter fell in mid-April. We had a cooler winter here in New Jersey, and that meant that I have the bulk of my tulips ready for Easter. Like, that is just winning the tulip lottery. Unfortunately, Easter tends to hop around on the calendar. So, for example, last year was late March. Next year, it's also going to be late March. This time last year, at this point, most of my field tulips were already done. So if Easter ended up at this time last year, I could have put some into my cooler and held them. It would have been fine. The harder part is when Easter is earlier, because when Easter is in late March, you can do things like pre-cooled bulbs, but still that might only buy you like an extra week or two. And I would say the most of my tulips where I am don't come up until we're into our first week of April, if not second week. So what this means is, even if I have a good Easter season this year, I'm not going to order as much in anticipation for Easter next year. So tulips typically do well for me in spring. A lot of people love tulips. There's obviously tulips that you're competing with at the grocery store, all that stuff, even though they're not the same quality tulips. But people love tulips. However, the best day for tulip sales in spring is Easter. And so therefore, if you can move a large quantity on Easter, obviously you want to plant more. Now, had I known the stars would have aligned this year, had I known where E would be in our treatment right now, I probably would have planted more. But honestly, like, I didn't know where I'd be, if I would even be pulling tulips this time of year. So I'm happy with the amount that I planted. But as we are preparing for next year's order, I caution people who are trying to time it on Easter, because Easter is so early. And unless if you live in like the Midwest or the South, where it is reasonable for you to be able to hit Easter, you should not be thinking about ordering large quantities if you're in like the Northeast, the northern parts where you're like zone 6A and below. I also want to call out that despite what I just said about me feeling like I have a good handle on tulips, I said earlier in the video that these may not be ready. Well, guess what? They're surprising me. Despite the cooler weather over the past few days, these have progressed a lot more quickly than I would have thought. They're certainly not ready today. Tomorrow's going to be a day closer to 70 with clouds. These might actually be ready in time for Saturday for the country store. So it goes to tell you that you can grow as many tulips as you want, but at the end of the day, you know, no one knows 100% sure how to predict things, and sometimes we have pleasant surprises. I have to head back in and do some more meetings. My plan is to wait until end of day to harvest these. These are in a stage where if it weren't for Easter, I would be picking them right now to be able to store and maximize vase life. But when we think about Easter and what we're trying to achieve from a customer expectation perspective, these guys, we want them to be on their prime on Sunday on the dining room table. So it's okay if they are a little bit more mature. Today's Thursday. So there's 3 more days, including today, before we get to Easter. And so of course they will continue maturing and opening up in homes, but I want these to be a little bit more further along so that when the customer picks them up, they're starting to open in color. And by the time we get to Sunday, they're gonna be at their prime.
It's time to harvest some more tulips, and this time I did start the stopwatch. My intent is to understand what is the labor cost per bulb on average, and I need to do a couple of time trials in order to confirm this number. Now, for those who are interested in details, I do have a new Patreon post on whether or not my 15 cents a bulb from a couple of videos ago is validated for the 2025 season. So if you want all the details, head on over to my Patreon.
Just finished harvesting, and we are now going to make the bouquets for the first of the pre-orders that are coming tomorrow. We've got 7 bouquets going out the door for pre-orders, and we're also going to restock the country store.
Now, of course, tracking labor costs for tulips doesn't just involve tracking harvesting. We also have to track how long it takes for us to make bouquets. This time of year, I find making bouquets to be a little bit easier because we're basically making straight bunches, even though there are some daffodil stems in there. And I find that on average, I can make a bouquet soup to nuts in a minute. That includes putting the bunch together and wrapping it with paper, stapling it, and putting it into the bucket.
All right, so we knocked out 9 bouquets. I'm probably gonna go harvest a little bit more later just to have at least one more bouquet for the country store tomorrow. So that'll be like 3. I just need to text the store manager to see where those bouquets are at. But as you can see, like these buckets are having problems fitting more than 3. I mean, this bucket has has 4 in there, but they're a little squished. So ideally there's 3 in each bucket. And yeah, I mean, these honestly don't look so impressive right now, but they're gonna open really, really beautifully. And part of the marketing that I do is show people what a before and after looks like. So that way I can temper expectations and hopefully get people excited about the bouquets too. So not related to tulips, but perhaps a more important topic. I talked earlier about planting ramps out in the tree line over there. So we have some friends who have a ton of ramps, and we've learned that you can transplant ramps, especially if they have the bulb on. And ramps, for those of you who don't know, are this like special delicacy. A lot of high-end restaurants actually seek out ramps this time of year. They grow wild, and what we love to do is put them into pizza. So we are so excited. For our pizza, we always make our own dough. We have a go-to dough that's a Neapolitan style by Kenji Lopez Alt. I'll put it in the description for those of you who want to know. The sauce is made from tomatoes that we canned ourselves. Fortunately, I don't have a cow, or else I tried to make my own mozzarella cheese. The pepperoni is also not ours, but just pretty cool that some of those ingredients are already coming from our garden, or if not, a neighbor's garden.
Ooh la la. Let's see if we can get a close-up view. Oh, it's dancing. Oh, look at that. It looks so good. All right, I think it's time to take this guy out. Ooh la la. Look at that. So good. Time to make a few more pizzas.
It's around 8 a.m. and I'm getting set up for pickup today. So in the past, what I've done is I've just left buckets of flowers outside. People come pick up, or I'll even greet the person because I know what time they're coming based off of the form that they fill out when they check out. But that's just a lot of work for me to be on call, and I have to work this morning. So what I'm doing is I'm implementing what I've done with my CSA pickups that have worked really well. So this area is sunny right now. It's going to be a little bit shadier. In 2 hours, pickups start. So I'm going to put these flowers in the shade after I finish filming. But I want to show you what the setup looks like. So I have this frame over here, which is this like greeting frame. It just says specialty tulip and narcissus flowers. Please check your name off the list. I created this in Canva. And then I have this over here, which is basically a sign-in sheet. So I know who has picked up. It has the number of bouquets per person, the date that they're coming to check off. And then once they check that off, I'll know who has come pick up and who hasn't. So today we only have 1, 2, 3, 4 people coming. And so it's not a lot of traffic, but this is a way that helps me organize and just know exactly like what's happening on the farm. So let me show you what that looks like when someone comes. We have a really long driveway. They come up, they can park here. We have a lot of parking now since we put up the pole barn, and then they're over there, and I'm going to close the garage, and that's basically our little small pickup station. Got another bucket of flowers that I have to drop off at the country store. I've already gotten some Instagram messages of people saying can't wait to go, so definitely need to make sure that those are dropped off. I always like to go because Eric drops off and like he doesn't know what to look at and all that stuff. So I'm going to try to go today and see what the current progress is. It is Friday afternoon. I don't have a mic on me and I don't have time to go inside, but it is fairly warm outside. We're hitting 70 degrees, and this is the type of weather that gets tulips to color up and start blowing open. So I'm going to try to harvest as many as possible, show you the current state of what the tulips look like, and we're going to go from there. This is Foxtrot. You can see some of these are starting to open up. This is more like a white pinkish type of tulip. Luckily, many of these still have a little bit more time, but I'm going to pull all of those that are starting to open up. Same with these over here. They're not colored up, which is good, but we've got some more of these Foxy Foxtrot, which are definitely coloring up a bit more fast than I would like them to. So we're going to start pulling.
No timer was set for this harvest because the goal was to do everything as quickly as possible and get the stems into the pole barn where it's cooler. But one thing that was really clear during this harvest is that it takes a lot more time to take the bulb off to get that extra inch or 2 of stem length on shorter variety tulips. So I don't know if I'm going to buy a variety like Foxtrot next year that just inherently is a little bit shorter. Now, I did know that the Foxtrot series tends to be shorter, but I grew it anyway because I loved it and I wanted to see how stems would perform. I did get some stems of adequate length that were like 12 inches, but for the most part, I had to split most of the bulbs. Ta-da! We have another bucket. And what I'm going to do is now I'm going to make the bouquets for tomorrow because I'm trying to see, do I have any excess stems where I could potentially open up pre-ordering again? I don't think so, but that's why I want to make them right now.
Today is the last day of pickups and making bouquets for Easter. Just set up our little station like yesterday. I had to get up a little bit early to harvest a few more stems to make 4 bouquets. We've got 10 picking up today. Last minute yesterday, someone was like, do you have extra bouquets? And because I had made all the bouquets, I knew roughly how much I had left. I was like, yes, I still have enough. So what that means is I've got a bunch of short stems for the country store. So one of my strategies is if the country store doesn't sell out, I take some of the stems that are a little bit more blown open, which is what people actually want to see, especially on Easter, and I'll mix it with newer stems so they don't open for a little bit. We've got my parents coming. We're doing an Easter egg hunt. So really looking forward to spending some time with family, but we're in the home stretch right now. And you can see I added an extra person on the list. So this is ready to go right now. Can we actually do a zoom in on this one though? This is Foxtrot. So the yellow ones are Foxy Foxtrot. You know, they get a little bit more creamy apricot, but this is Foxtrot itself, and it's got this beautiful pink white type of bloom. It'll get more pink throughout. So I think these are gonna look great. I haven't had any Foxtrot in the house yet. I've got a bunch of short stems, which I'll put to enjoy for myself, but more of these Foxtrot were coming in. So I'm really hoping that customers get to enjoy this. I showed you what Tahiti looked like earlier in the week. I think she opens up to be even more beautiful and complex. I'm really, really liking her. My friend Jordan convinced me to buy Tahiti daffodil bulbs because she has really long stems. And again, these were planted really late after November and they still achieve decent size stems for the bouquet. So this is a winner in my book. It is now Saturday afternoon. We are completely sold out of flowers. Just finished our Easter egg hunt with family and thought I would wrap this video up with some numbers. So this weekend we moved a total of 22 bouquets through our pre-order self-pickup system, and then we moved an additional 6 bouquets at the country store. I am happy with the 22 bouquet number for the pre-reservation pickup piece, but I am disappointed with the 6 bouquets at the country store because that is really low for something like Easter weekend. Now, I knew that customers wanted to see what the tulips look like, a little bit more open and colored up. Fortunately, the weather just wasn't cooperating in the sense it was too cool. So that's great for an extended vase life, but not great for customers who don't realize that these tulips are dynamic and are going to change. And so that's the feedback I got from the shop owner, which was that people were just kind of like, well, these tulips are meh, like, are they going to stay like this? So they didn't gain a lot of traction until I did a before and after video yesterday, literally showing the difference between just like 24 hours being in a warm environment. So the difference was I only sold 1 bouquet on Thursday and Friday. And after that video went out, I basically sold 4 bouquets nearly immediately at the country store. And I planned to restock, but ran out of bouquets because I had some more people contact me last minute who wanted on-farm pickup. So that's a total of 28 bouquets, which is a number I'm happy with because just given our family situation, I didn't plant a ton of tulips. I got really lucky that my tulips came on time. It's just kind of funny that I originally thought I was going to have like 800 tulips. Instead, I had closer to 300 tulips that were ready. And I probably still have like another 250 to 300 in the ground. So I think I overestimated how much I planted by about 200. And the reason why I overestimated is because I also sell bulbs. I wasn't actually sure how many were in the crate left to kind of just dump the rest of the crate into the ground. But anyway, the other thing I wanted to quickly talk about was in the beginning of the video, I talked about how I wanted to maximize the per cart value of customers and sell more through less people. So those 22 bouquets were moved through 10 people. Some people took the buy 2, get 1 free deal. Some people only bought 1 bouquet. So again, to me, especially as someone in year 4 with some customer base, my goal is to continue marketing to those people who are really happy with my flowers. Typically, anytime you're trying to gain additional customers, you're going to have to put in additional effort. And even though that additional effort doesn't feel like it costs anything, it does cost you your time. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to be doing general marketing, but what it means is that I'm going to be pretty laser focused in terms of trying to maximize the potential from the customers that I know who want flowers from me. So if you are someone who has at least a year under your belt, you have a clientele, I really encourage you to not try to reinvent the wheel and chase after new customers. Try to maximize what you have with your current customers because it's always a lot easier to sell to a customer who's bought from you than to try to find someone who has never bought from you. Now, at the end of the day, when I do my cost calculations, I came back with a 67% profit margin. That actually includes labor. So that includes the labor of planting, harvesting, as well as wrapping those bouquets, even driving down to the country store, washing buckets. It includes all of that. So 67% is something that I'm pretty happy with. What that number does not include, though, is the land that we grow on, the costs for that, as well as like accounting software or general overhead that would be there to run a business regardless of whether or not I grow tulips. So the reason why I don't include that is because at the end of the year, when I'm looking at per crop margins, profitability, I'm looking at those crop specific expenses, because again, like I would be having to pay for a website or accounting service fees regardless of whether or not I grow tulips. By virtue of operating a business, those overhead costs would have to exist, and therefore I don't put them into crop specific costs. So if you want a more detailed breakdown, I have a complimentary Patreon post on that topic where I not only break down the profitability and the margin by my channels, so this case being the pre-order pickup as well as the country store, but I also talk a little bit about what I would do differently next year in terms of planting for harvesting efficiency purposes. And the other adjacent Patreon exclusive video that I have is actually related to the paper that I use for these tulips, why I didn't use pre-made sleeves. I give a bit of a visual breakdown or representation of the why behind that. I find that paper is not one size fits all, and so even for tulips, I have a very specific type of paper arrangement that I use. I think it's also worth noting that for me, I'm pretty proud of having sales of about, I think it's $535 for this Easter weekend. Everything is relative, right? I'm in year 4. There are some flower farmers whose year 4 is phenomenal. They're having over thousands of dollars in sales on Easter weekend. There are some in year 4 who would be happy to be able to have $500 on this weekend. I think it really depends on your objectives, and you should be clear on what you're trying to achieve. So for me, maximizing my sales is not at all an objective for me this year. If anything, my objective is to be able to grow more food, more organic types of produce that's hard to find, to be able to support E in her recovery and for our family, and grow some flowers along the way, and use that as a way of challenging myself to see, 1, how quickly can I grow my retail channel, but more importantly, 2, grow it in a way that is working smarter, not harder. So again, maximizing that cart size, even elevating the perceived value of what that end product is going to look like. So more to come on this in the future, but I say this because I don't want people to watch this video and think about the number, right? Like, to me, this is all about the experience and the experience of not only the knowledge that you gain, but also the experience of things that you can't put a price tag on. So to give you an example, we had multiple customers that bought gifts for E. Our store partner bought a really generous gift for E. And those are just things that I would never have expected, but really goes to show you what it means to run a small business in a community that values small businesses. And it's all about the relationships that you build, and you can't put a price tag on that. So I feel like I'm rambling at this point. I would love to hear how your Easter sales went in the comments below. And here is a quick update on E.
Ladybug.
You want Play-Doh?
What's your favorite color? Look,
Play-Doh.
pink Play-Doh. Your favorite.